Mental illness is a constant, grueling battle. It's probably one of life's greatest battles, and that battle that you have with yourself can last a lifetime. Even until now, after everything that I've been through, I still find it disturbing that according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people in the world have to struggle through this. Now, I'm standing here not as a professional psychologist, not as a lecturer, not as a researcher. I'm standing here simply as a girl whose life experiences have told her that it is about time for her to open up about a few chapters of her life that might just make a change. My middle school and high school years weren't exactly the best. Being the largest girl in the school, I had to deal with a lot of body shaming. At the time, I didn't have actually anyone to confide in, not my parents, not my friends, because back then my parents were divorced and my brother was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder. And for those of you who are not yet aware, social anxiety disorder is basically having this excessive yet unnecessary fear of basically normal social situations. Upon realizing the situation at home, I figured that the people in my family have already had enough on their plate. So I resorted to my academics and the arts as a tool to escape from everything that was going on in my life. I figured that if I focused on academics, I would be able to fill in this void that I have been left with inside. But as time passed by, I've noticed how I've started to develop this obsession over grades. I felt this dire need to get this perfect scores that I became so hard on myself that I restricted myself from so much. I remember back then, whenever my friends and my family would ask me to go out, I would refuse. I jumped into senior high school weighing about 92 kilograms. I was obese. And what's worse is that at the time, the girls in my class started becoming very body conscious of themselves. And it kind of made me feel worse because they were quite vocal about it. But I knew inside that I couldn't blame them because it was a completely natural part of growing up for both men and women. So I decided to try and take that positively. And take a turn in my life that I thought would make me happier. I decided to try and lose weight. I figured that because my academics wasn't working anymore to fill in that void, maybe losing weight might do the trick. And so I did. I committed myself to a diet program, but I wouldn't say it was very healthy. Basically, what I did was I would starve myself and I would limit my calorie intake and I would keep track of my calories in this calorie tracking app to ensure that I wouldn't exceed a certain amount of calories. And when I do, I would force myself into the exercise bike or the treadmill because I would feel guilty. I restricted myself from so much, not only in terms of food, but also in terms of life. So I entered college weighing about 52 kilograms. Admittedly, I was at an ideal weight, and I entered one of the most reputable universities in Indonesia. But for some reason, I wasn't happy. It didn't make me feel as good as I thought it would. And I guess there's some untold truth about this whole dieting and this whole self-image thing that we are not told of when we were young. The problem was never with my weight. The problem was in the way that I perceived myself. It was about this whole self-perception thing that we are not being told of when we're young. I pushed myself so hard. I tried to morph myself into someone or something that isn't me. I've been lying to myself. Because the truth is, sometimes it doesn't matter how much you weigh, it doesn't matter how high your grades are, and it doesn't matter how well you fit into today's unrealistic standards. What matters is how you see yourself. What matters is what you see when you look into the mirror at any time of the day. You see, I didn't have that kind of mentality back when I was in college, when I first started off my 3 months in college. Thus, after those 3 months, I immediately dropped out. I was lost, I was confused, I was angry, I was furious, I was angst. I basically experienced this, this amalgamation of these negative emotions that I had absolutely no control over. What I went through really did reshape the way I thought, the way I felt, and the way I behaved. It changed the way I operated and functioned as an individual. I would start to do things that I knew was wrong, especially those self-inflicting acts such as self-harm. I would also develop this unhealthy, incredibly unhealthy eating habit, wherein I would binge huge amounts of food until my stomach would feel like it's about to explode, and then in response to that, I would either starve myself for the next 1 to 2 days or purge it out. And that wasn't healthy. Basically, there was a voice inside of me that was dominating my true self as it was drowning. Upon realizing how much I was struggling, my parents took me to a therapist, and she was very nice. It was easy for me to open up to her, and she introduced me to this thing called cognitive behavioral therapy. Basically, the aim of these therapy sessions is to ensure that whatever is going on here in your head and whatever is going on here, such as your feelings, your impulse, your emotions, are all in sync. And I realized then that all this time, the reason why I have been resorting to self-inflicting acts whenever something goes on in my life, something goes wrong at least, is because my emotions were so dominant that my logic had absolutely no say in whatever I was doing. And this is what makes recovery so difficult for me. And it's probably one of the hardest things that I ever had to do with my life. You will experience a lot of setbacks. You will experience a point in your life where you feel like there's nothing left to fight for anymore. But you will also learn a vast amount of things. I learned a vast amount of things. Throughout my journey towards recovery, I learned that mental illness is not a choice. Mental illness can occur at any point in your life, as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, as an adult, and it can occur after a traumatic event, and it can also be genetically transmitted, possibly like diabetes or cancer. But why is it that when someone says they're physically ill, we run towards them to ensure their recovery, but when someone says they're depressed, some of us would run towards the other way? Now, I also learned that this is called stigma. And that stigma has built a barrier for people with mental illnesses to gain access to proper health services. In all honesty, I would consider myself as being one of the lucky ones because I had the privilege to grow up in an environment that was completely supportive of me and was open to the idea of mental health and mental illness. But for some others, that's not the case. In other parts of Indonesia, people with mental illnesses are considered dangerous, a threat, or possibly even possessed by demons. It sounds crazy, but it's the truth. And that fear has bred the belief that these people should be confined from the existing communities around them. In fact, a study by Susi Sabayang, a public health lecturer from Erlangga University, revealed that about 28.1% of people with mental health problems in Indonesia are either locked in or shackled. Now, this picture that I'm displaying right now was taken in a mental health clinic in Bekasi called Yayasan Galuh that has raised a few questions regarding their violation of human rights. Imagine locking in patients, keeping them behind bars, and chaining them to the floor. And it's even crazier to think that this is only one out of the possibly many other mental health clinics out there in Indonesia, especially their rural areas, that treat their patients this way. Now, this is a true indication regarding how rare mental health resources are in this country. In fact, reports have shown that Indonesia, a country with 260 million lives, is only equipped with 773 psychiatrists and 451 psychologists. If we were to calculate that, that is one psychiatrist for every 336,000 lives and one psychologist for every 576,000 lives. These figures have made me realize just about how lucky I am to be able to get the mental health care that everyone supposedly deserves. This figure has also made me realize that mental health in our country is yet to be considered a crucial component of individual development. Now, I'm not here to provide solutions for the government. I'm simply here to provide personal solutions that I think can put an end to this vicious cycle. You see, it seems as though our reluctance to talk about our mental health has contributed to the slow progress in raising awareness. A lot of my friends I know are so reluctant to talk about their mental health because they are fearful of being judged, because they think it's embarrassing or it's something to be ashamed of, when really it isn't. It's okay not to be okay. Your struggles, your mental health issues, is not the definition of who you are. It's not a label or a tag that you carry around. Back when I was at my low point, I was so scared to meet anyone, not even my high school friends, for a reunion, because I was scared that they would judge me for what I had to go through. I thought so little of myself that I felt like I wasn't fit to do anything. But little did I know that at some point in my life, these events, these harsh events, could shape me into the individual I am today, the stronger individual I am today that I am genuinely proud of becoming. And along that process of healing, trying to get myself back up on my 2 feet, I learned to acknowledge that recovery is such a beautiful thing. You begin to discover parts of yourself that you never even knew existed. And you begin to acknowledge and love yourself and respect yourself more in ways like never before, regardless of what you do or do not have. And you see, that's the thing that we are not told of when we were young. If you probably notice, as we grow up, there are barely anyone, or at least enough people, to remind us the importance of self-care and self-love, when really it is very, very crucial for anyone, be it at their low point or not. And this can change with your stories, because the voice is such a powerful weapon that can create change. And the moment that you talk about your mental health issues, your encounters, your struggles, the more you will encourage others to talk. And the more people talk, the more people understand, and the less mental health will be stigmatized. Thank you.